The ants then attacked him, but since Jaehwan could understand them, he did not kill them immediately. Instead he tried to stop them and threatened to kill them if they dared to attack him again. Well, in the end, he slaughtered the entire colony of ants, and left one alive to question him. However, the ant instead mocked him and Jaehwan tortured him, telling him to speak in a way he could understand. Then, instead of being tortured more, the ant just bit its own tongue. Even though they were weak in front of Jaehwan, they still had greater strength than he expected. When examining the ant's body, he found a small-sized backpack that allowed him to store bulky items like an inventory. However, he thought he would be able to use the interface systems of other dimensional worlds such as the Almighty Land, but he was relieved when he could see information about the item in this place anyway. When examining his sword from the 99th floor, he discovered that the sword could change shape and devour corpses. Finally, he found a map showing the third illusion, chaos. Elsewhere, there is a red-haired woman herding wolves for her teammates. They are surprised to see her messing with Baihorn, a wolf boss with 2 horns. Jaehwan saw them from afar, assuming they would die facing Baihorn. He knew that the woman was the strongest of them all, thought that she might be scamming them or something. As a large red man prepares to attack, the woman claims that she will help him, but instead punches him in the face. However, the Baihorn right in front of him would swallow him to pieces. With a single stab, Jaehwan saved him, shattering Baihorn's skull. While talking to them, Jaehwan let them take Baihorn's body away, while on the sidelines, the red-haired woman was worried about something. They revealed that Jaehwan is just someone. However, it still confused them. On top of that, he couldn't speak the language of that place. It was strange to them. From behind, the red-haired woman tried to check on Jaehwan, but her skills couldn't see his state. So she tries to talk to him, saying that there are very few people adapted in times of chaos who can kill Baihorn with a single push. She asked, who is Jaehwan really? Is and where he comes from. However, he doesn't know what chaos is, so he asks her about it, which confuses her, thinking Jaehwan is teasing her. She tried to make sure if he understood what she was saying, which Jaehwan confirmed he did. Jaehwan knows who he is, it's just where he belongs, and the relationships he has on Earth all became meaningless the moment he entered the tower. In return, Jaehwan gained new teammates and memories. However, when the tutorial ends, they all disappear as if they were an illusion. Even though the comrades at his side are probably somewhere on Earth, and the obvious bonus is that he gets to keep all his memories when he starts over. They won't remember him or the memories they had in the tower. So Jaehwan declared that he didn't remember anything about the red-haired woman. But she didn't believe him and started shouting at him, and she could only assume that Jaehwan was the strongest of the abyss or something. Meanwhile, his weapon vibrated and Jaehwan picked it up. It changed shape and swallowed the weapon Jaehwan gave it. Surprising the red-haired woman, she realized it was a spirit weapon. In addition, other members of the group also noticed that, thinking that a soul weapon was right in front of them, while Jaehwan was completely unaware that they were watching. The red-haired woman was unbelievable that someone like Jaehwan ruined her mission to eliminate the group's leader. Finally, she gave him something, so she asked him if he wanted to listen. The woman introduced herself as Mino. She gave a simple explanation of what chaos is. Both Jaehwan and Mino then talked about the party. It turns out they are a cruel group of people belongs to a clan called Black Fox. And she asked him to kill them. Well, she tells him that Jaehwan will find out soon, because they will definitely come after him. When night fell, the leader said they would stop and camp there, as they might provoke the horned monster if they moved. Jaehwan knew that based on the map, the village wasn't far away, so he wanted to see what they were up to. At this point, he has awakened to the second stage, allowing him to use knowledge of items or matter in chaos. While the other members were muttering to themselves, they rated Jaehwan's spiritual power as low, even lower than the group leader. Therefore, they assumed that Jaehwan could kill Baihorn only with the help of his soul weapon. Meanwhile, Jaehwan is confused when Beastrain claims that the items in the tower are nightmares. That wasn't very impressive, but thinking that everyone was after it was beyond him right now. One thing is for sure, he knows that chaos is not an omnipotent land. When the Black Foxes finally moved, Mino tried to warn Jaehwan, but he just lay there. She asks him to use the soul weapon to eliminate them, but Jaehwan claims that he no longer has it. He said he lent it to someone else, as the person declared that he wanted to look into it during the night watch. Then the leader mocked him because now Jaehwan had no more weapons. He wanted to get rid of both Mino and Jaehwan so he could go back to sleep. Mino was angry, calling all sorts of things and releasing his powers, while Jaehwan was excited that he can finally see her true abilities. They had bloodthirsty eyes, as they could easily take them both down with ease by numbers. But with just a swing of his hand, Mino can to eliminate two members immediately. She grabbed a black dagger and threw it hard at another member to satisfy her anger, and she apologized for throwing it too hard. Presently, she expressed her anger, and from that moment on, she asked them to come attack her at the same time. The chief suspected her before, but now he is certain that Mino is the massacre witch. He asked her about the person who authorized her assassination in the dark forest. And she doesn't value him that much, said that the black fox had killed countless unfit humans, so naturally, chaos was flooded with people asking her to kill them. So the leader uses Jaehwan's spiritual weapon, with more black fox members appearing behind him. It turns out he also called his master, said that if the soul weapon could easily fall into his hands, he should not call out the owner. Clant, Black Clan leader Fox is a stage 3 converter. He reveals that half of the Black Fox members have gathered just to hunt Jaehwan. Mino thought it was an honor for her that he doing so. She then called Jaehwan, apologizing that she couldn't protect him now. She gives him an escape stone, where it looks like the return stone or mare's stone. Mino explains that it is the escape stone. If Jaehwan uses it, he can teleport nearest fort, and she only has one of them, tells him he should use it. Jaehwan asked Mino if there was a way to return to the past, would she come back? She said of course she would never go back, she had lived too hard so she couldn't go back. If she died, she would die today, and she would never return to the past. That's when Jaehwan stepped up and said that Mino wouldn't die today, pulled out his sword and started killing the Black Fox member. The leader uses a spell to buff his members, and fire appeared on the members' bodies. However, they were simply massacred by Jaehwan. When Jaehwan reached Clant, his chest was simply split in half by Jaehwan. And behind him was the red-haired man holding Jaehwan's sword. When Jaehwan approached the man, the red-haired man just knelt down and gave the sword to Jaehwan. Now, with the soul weapon in hand, Jaehwan used a slight thrust and massacred all Black Fox members. Surprised Mino because she initially thought so he was stupid to let them take his sword, and just an idiot insensitive to danger. But that's not true, because Jaehwan is simply too strong. She then asked him again about his true identity, and he said if she had forgotten, adding that she already knew who he was. He teased her asking if she also now she has lost her memories, making her very confused. So she asked about the escape stone that she gave it to Jaehwan, but he refused to give it to her and said he no longer had it. The truth is that Jaehwan destroyed it. A moment later, over the bonfire, he looked at the sky, feeling how peaceful it was. While Mino was struggling to find the stone, says that since a man knows nothing she needs to look for it everywhere. Jaehwan then said that because he thought Mino already knew about his identity. Where he is a human being. She was confused by that, so he asked her again if she was human, and she said she was, and for Jaehwan, just being friends with her is enough. Instead, it confused her, but she didn't think too much about it and they call it a night. The next morning, they walked towards the village and Mino said she was jealous of him because he didn't remember how Jaehwan got to Chaos. So he asked how Mino got to Chaos, and she explained that if he knew what he was asking, he will truly regret it. They then arrive at Gorgon Fortress and Jaehwan notices an altar that looks like a summoning circle. On the first floor of the Nightmare Tower. Suddenly many people appeared on the altar, shouting all kinds of things. And Jaehwan knows exactly when humans make that expression. Mino explained to him, as Jaehwan could see for himself, those who came to Chaos were all those who died from the tower in every world. He reminded him not to ask how people came to Chaos when she welcomed him to it, Chaos, the land of the dead. Not long after that, a lot the officials approached the altar, welcoming them. They brought a blanket and the captain told his men to line up and take them straight into the speaking room. It turned out that Mino realized the captain was calling him, James. She told him that she came to the fort by chance and because they recognized each other, she asks him to let her pass. But James refused her, explaining that the situation had changed a bit, because not long ago, the superiors changed the policy. Therefore, those who want to enter the fort must present a certificate. She then bribes the captain with a horn from Byhorn and he happily accepts. Next, he asked Jaehwan about the certificate which he didn't have anything like that. Mino then teased him, saying she would help him if he said please. The captain explains that he cannot enter the fortress without the certificate, so Jaehwan tries to get something from his clothes. That made Mino nervously wonder if Jaehwan had her planning to kill all the guards and massacre their way into the fortress. Knowing what kind of person Jaehwan is, Mino thought he could really do it. However, when Mino tried to cover him, someone was calling them and asking what was going on there. Turned out to be the manager, one of the cleanest checkpoints in Chaos. Northern Checkpoint, Stubborn Sheriff, Carlton. Arriving right in front of James, Carlton asked him to explain what was going on. So he explained that Jaehwan wanted to go in even though he didn't have the certificate. Carlton then told him that of course he couldn't get in. But when Jaehwan asked why, Carlton read that the law forbade him from doing so. However, it is also his power that binds everyone around him, making them uncomfortable. Kneel down, it is called the act of restraining the Gorgon. However, with just one swing of his sword, Jaehwan broke Mino and he broke free, explaining that he didn't care about Carlton's law or anything. He then added that he did not need a certificate because he would prove his identity himself. But Carlton ignored him. He used another act, releasing a white chain to try to bind Jaehwan. Again, he could easily get away. The necklace surprised everyone. Finally, Jaehwan asked if he could do what Mino did to the captain. It made James pale, feeling dizzy, and feared that he might be exposed. Well, Jaehwan just threw something to Carlton without caring about the others or Mino. Noticing the situation, James shouted at Jaehwan that how dare he bribe the police chief, suggesting that he should be executed. But Carlton held him back and said he was waiting for Jaehwan, the messenger of the Green Party. Check Mino's soul damage. Equipment advises her to take the medicine as soon as possible because her soul corruption has exceeded 15%. She then explains that soul corruption is a chronic disease that everyone living in chaos suffers from. Just by existing in chaos, human souls will gradually be corrupted. That is why horn monsters are so precious to humans in chaos, because the horn is the only thing, a medicine that can reduce soul corruption in chaos. Carlton then measures Jaehwan's, but device the extent of his soul corruption could not be measured and it showed 0% on the screen. Carlton then smiled, returning what Jaehwan had given him. Carlton told him that he should not easily hand over the soul stone to anyone but called him the messenger of green. But Jaehwan says he's not from the greens or whatever Carlton keeps saying. That he already knew. Carlton then explains that the soul stone is a precious item that amplifies spirituality. Power, but it's not that simple. In the short time Carlton held it, his hand was completely damaged. So, someone who doesn't belong to the Green Party will never be able to handle the soul stone. The only creatures capable of carrying stone without damage are greens. Although Jaehwan is not a member of the Green Party, Carlton believes in Jaehwan's soul. He explains why the device cannot measure Jaehwan's soul, because his soul is the purest of all souls in chaos. When Carlton and James entered the fortress, it was as if James' nightmare had come true. Carlton mentioned that there seemed to be someone at the gate allowing people to pass after accepting a bribe. Meanwhile in the village, Jaehwan thinks things are getting too complicated. On top of that, he's carrying a deadly weight, after Carlton punished Mino with the law for not carrying her own identification, and became a mindless zombie following Jaehwan everywhere. He then asked the villagers if he was looking for a blacksmith skilled in working with swords, where someone noticed his spiritual weapon. Arriving at a tunnel, Mino woke up and Jaehwan told her to go her own way. But she doesn't want to, says it was so far away that he abandoned her like that. She assumed Jaehwan was still mad at her because she tried to leave him at the gate, but she just considered it a joke. He then says that it is enough for her because now that he has been guided to the castle, from then on, she will be an obstacle. Because Jaehwan and Mino have always been different, he tells her to go her own way. However, just like some argument, Mino decided to follow him, asking him if he knew where he was going. Looking at her, Jaehwan revealed that he was about to go find the nightmare. It turns out she might know a place he could stay, then they agree to go there. But before that, he needed to deal with their followers, as there were several people related to them. A group of thugs asked Jaehwan gave them the sword. But he just flatly denied it. While the incident was going on, Mino instead got angry at the youngest thugs, where it was obvious the oldest in the group. Jaehwan had enough, he pushed the thug's hand, aiming a little away from the group to warn them. Since it annoyed him, he asked them to attack together quickly. The leader was angry because his cute youngest brother's hand was cut off. So they attacked Jaehwan together, but he didn't kill them, just knocked them out. Mino teased him if he knew anything other than thrust. Jaehwan says he didn't, he basically spent 15 years of his life stabbing swords. She then wonders why he missed his thrust earlier, blowing up the roof. It turns out he noticed someone using some hidden skill on the roof. So Jaehwan decided to scare him a little, because it annoyed him. A while later, they finally reached the forge called Twilight's Fall. One of the practitioners in charge of talking to customers came and greeted them. It was a young man, looking healthy. Said they were pretty busy that day, even though he placed his order today, it will take some time. Inside, the students were all looking eagerly a sword made from Quadhorn's horn, and they volunteered to work on the jade slot. He added that whoever succeeds will become vice owner for the day. The smith owner, Michael, allows them to try, but even after taking turns, they still fail. Even created a scratch on the sword. When Michael gets angry with his apprentices, Jaehwan sneaks into the smithy and says he will try. Michael underestimated Jaehwan, saying that even his apprentices couldn't do it. However, with his index finger, Jaehwan stabbed the small sword, making a hole in it, swing it around and declare that he becomes vice owner for the day. However, when Jaehwan played with the sword, it shattered into pieces, surprising the whole world. Forge and made Michael angry with him. Even though he was angry because the price of raw materials for making horns was so expensive and Jaehwan broke it like that. So he frowned and apologized for what he had done, because he didn't just break the necessary part but instead he broke the whole thing. That made Michael angry, asking Jaehwan to compensate him materially. So he took out a horn that came from the pentahorn, and Michael happily accepted it, even blushing when he looked at the giant horn. He then told his apprentices to close the door, took Jaehwan to his personal smithy, and expressed that it was the best facility in the entire Gorgon region. Jaehwan took out another horn. The pentahorn has 5 horns, so it obviously has more. But it meant nothing to Michael. Furthermore, Jaehwan wanted to make a scabbard with it. It was a pentahorn they were talking about. Though the material seems like overkill for just one scabbard. Jaehwan lent him the sword. After Michael looked at its state, he groaned, "Ah, the mist dragon sword." However, he thought it was a pity that this sword was just a copy. However, the sword began to make noise. Michael drops it in shock and it lands on Garnak's head horn. The sword then vibrated even harder as it opened its mouth and began to swallow the horn. Now Michael knew it was a spirit weapon. The frost dragon sword began to glow as it finished eating Garnak's horn. He expressed that he is seeing a lot of interesting things these days and added that the sword is evolving. But now they had no more ingredients because the ingredients had been swallowed by the sword. And Jaehwan said it was okay, adding that he had more and then took another one out of his backpack. Michael stood in front of Garnak's horn because this was the first time he had the opportunity to handle Garnak's horn. So, what did Michael ask Jaehwan? He can do to help, shape or form. When he replied that he would leave it to Michael, although he looked surprised, he declared himself Master of the Dawn. Show Jaehwan what he's capable of. At the same time, inside Gorgon Castle. A middle-aged man dressed neatly, coughing and drinking tea. The man in black bowed his head and knelt in front of the middle-aged man, reporting that they had lost their target. Plus he doesn't know what his team is like defeated, he was just knocked out and woke up lying on a roof. The man in the black robe is a stage 3 converter. If a stage 3 converter with master rank, high-level stealth skills are hidden, making it difficult for even higher-level adapters to detect. But the target found him and easily took him down without him even realizing it. The middle-aged man said he was probably in stage 5. If he was in that stage, men need to be prepared. Plus they would gather more men. And determined to find him, at any cost. At that moment, a deep noise came from prison cell under the castle. It was a slight tremor, but the middle-aged man, a high-level adapter, could feel it. Then he heard a long, weak scream coming from below. He frowned. "Master, please wait a little longer." The next day at the bar, middle-aged men were heard talking loudly from inside the pub. In the center is an old holographic camera showing a broadcast. The person being broadcast was a pink-haired girl with a small horn. The video then shows a man alone fighting one giant ice dragon. The man kept stabbing again and again without stopping. His face was censored to product information will not be leaked. The men at the bar made noise as they watched. At that moment, the pub door opened and a woman walked in. "Is Mino?" She walked quickly to the bar and sat down. Her slim waist and white face immediately attracted the attention of all the men in the pub. The men were shocked and frightened by the vicious energy pressure that Mino released and ran away. Mino smiled bitterly. She thought about Jaehwan and felt bitter, so she drank to her heart's content. Then the bar owner appears, Aunt Claire, saying that bad girl Mino is bad for her business. Mino was too drunk to speak straight, but she continued to mumble. Claire narrowed her eyes. She knows Mino well. Mino has been like that since they met at the Tower of Nightmares. She is weak but has a hot temper. In addition, she also likes to tease people and cause trouble. She's not bad, but she always gets those around her into trouble. Claire brushes her hair, saying she should have sex with Jaehwan too because Claire thinks he's dangerous. Before Mino could reply, a message appeared created from spiritual power that shot through the tavern window and reached Mino. She checked the sender. Carlton, captain of the North Gate. At that moment, Mino felt a terrible pressure from all sides. One of the men walked up to her and asked, "Are you the massacre witch?" Mino pulled out a dagger from his clothes despite his drunkenness. The man approached her and grabbed her hand responded as the man smiled ominously and said he needed her to do something for them. Back at the forge, Michael is giving up on making the horn because he judges that the quality of the material is too high for him to handle. So Jaehwan put his hands on Michael's eyes and said the important thing is to be visible. Michael's eyes lit up, and the matter in front of him began to liquefy in front of him. That took him into a world where he could see the shape of the material he was actually processing. It took the form of a monster when it attacked them. Jaehwan told Michael to calm down, because he said he would help Jaehwan. He was extremely scared of what was happening before his eyes. I think yes, dreaming and looking for the emergency exit, and of course he ran away, leaving Jaehwan sighing. When Michael opened the door and asked for help, what he saw was said to be his apprentice were the skeletons as they were asking if the blacksmith had finished smelting. Michael panics when he witnesses another being, talking to him, calling him stupid, and told him he wasn't worthy to see that place yet. With his hammer and chisel, he was facing monsters without any skills. The monster attacked Jaehwan and he attacked back. The monster screamed and spat blood out of its body, but it didn't seem to mind at all. It's enjoying it. Amidst that chaos, Michael was shocked and scared. Finally, Jaehwan broke the horn and they talked about the past incident, involving the smithy owner. Jaehwan then touched the horn with his hand. The surface swirled as if it was responding to his touch. In the next moment, something unbelievable happened in front of Michael. The seeds that his fingers touched were dug up as if something had eaten them. Jaehwan shook his head. Michael focused closer. That reminded him of when he learned blacksmithing at school. His younger days, when his master explained to him that he would not exceed human limits, which made him instead determined to become like those Maras. Finally, he asked Jaehwan what he needed to do when fighting against the world. Jaehwan told Michael to consider carefully, don't rely on the system but instead with your own eyes. That's when he saw it, the real world he knew shouldn't exist. As Jaehwan rushed towards the spirit beast, it caused Michael to stand up and pick up the chisel again. With everything he had, he set out to rebuild the horn. Later that day, they were finally able to finish making the scabbard for the soul sword. And Jaehwan decided to name the newly awakened soul sword Lone Wolf, and they wrote it on the scabbard. So they said goodbye and Michael asked Jaehwan with his appearance in Jaehwan's eyes. He said that Michael looked like a human, when in reality, Jaehwan could see that all the people in the chaos looked like skeletons. As he walked around town, Mino turned around, so he asked her what made her follow him. So she revealed that she was planning on killing him, adding that she will have a good life by taking all the soul stones that Jaehwan has. She even gave him the bag of clothes, saying it was her way of saying sorry. She then asks what he will do now. At this time, Jaehwan knew how to meet Mare, so he planned to meet him to ask about the third illusion, and how to get to the abyss. Adds that he won't come back, saying he's a human after all, which makes her angry and asks who did he think he would say such a thing. That hurt her. Even though the people of chaos weren't as brave as Jaehwan, she insisted that they were definitely human too. However, no matter how many times they are saved, the truth remains the same. Because what the question showed him was the true nature of that world. A world where numbers and data rule, where there are people willing to sell their own souls to increase their numbers. That's when Mino broke the barrier and asked Jaehwan whether she looks like a human or not. When she says goodbye and says they won't see each other again, her appearance changes and she looks human again. The people of chaos are believed to be dead souls, coming to chaos after their deaths in the tower, but Jaehwan is different. He comes to chaos by exceeding the limits of what humans can do. He broke the ceiling erected by the tower and climbed chaos himself. Returning to the bar, Mino wondered how things could have happened like that when she opened the door. The bar is in chaos and a group of people are waiting for her inside, with Claire held hostage. They come from the Forbidden Heavenly clan. The leader was an elder named Janaya. He asked how Mino could come back alone. As she pulls out her dagger, says he seems more innocent, asking if he has once saw her keep her promise and added that someone wouldn't come. She attacks them and says that person will only destroy chaos, and Janaya describes how the witch went crazy. He released his shadow to fight her and she defeated them easily. When she attacked the last one, her dagger shot through towards Janaya, and he picked up his sword to counter her attack. That thing landed on her, injuring her. On top of that, Claire was also taken hostage while the battle was going on. In her final attempt, she performed her ultimate attack, releasing 8 daggers at once. However, Janaya destroyed them all with ease, showing off her cute technique. He then threatened to tear her apart himself, causing her to fall down and lose consciousness. The only thing she can remember is Jaehwan, and now, she wants to go back to the past, follow him back to that day. And she thought how she hated it. This pattern develops, as Janaya attempts to attack her with his sword. Suddenly, there is an attack from the sky that Janaya is able to defend against with her sword. Jaehwan comes, stands next to Mino, and she says why he's there, instead of destroying the world. He said the clothes she gave him didn't fit, so he returned them. Meanwhile, Janaya realizes that Jaehwan is the one who took the soul stone. While his men laughed loudly at the thought that Jaehwan had saved them the trouble of looking for him. Jaehwan asked Janaya if they were the people who went with Mare, telling them to take Mare there. Janaya thinks Jaehwan might be crazy, because Mino told him that Janaya is a stage 4 convert. Now, they started to gather and get together attack Jaehwan, shouting that they would teach him a lesson. Even so, Jaehwan made his minimal jabs towards Janaya, which he dodged. Realizing that Janaya cannot defeat Jaehwan, he captures Claire and threatens to kill her. Mino asked Jaehwan to save her, however, it instead left him confused with thoughts that he just needed to cut anyone who gets in his way. So Mino grabs him as she cries that Claire is a human. That shocked Jaehwan for a moment. While looking at their true nature, Claire screams, telling him to start attacking. Finally, Jaehwan crashed into the roof, creating a pillar of light, shooting into the sky, that also destroys the barrier they deployed earlier, informed the guard in Gorgon. At that moment, Carlton and his men arrived and greeted Jaehwan. And asked what the hell was going on. Jaehwan expressed how he came at the right time considering that Janaya was breaking the law. Plus they intend to use the bar as their stand to try to destroy the world by plotting with Mare. Even though Jaehwan is the one who really wants to destroy chaos. Immediately, Carlton used his powers and used silver restraint to save the world. Carlton also summoned an axe he made himself to capture the culprit. Even saying that any further resistance would be futile. Although Janaya did not give up, he still rushed forward and attacked Carlton with his sword. Their clash created a wave of sound that spread throughout the bar. However, Janaya's sword cracked when it met the light axe. So he jumped up, using all his strength to try and attack Carlton again. Finally, Carlton used the light chain again, and this time he easily defeated Janaya. Moments later, Janaya held the axe to his neck as he surrendered. Janaya also expressed how he heard that Carlton was actually as naive as he was. Then, Janaya threw a poison gas bomb into the bar. When they tried to get out, he said he didn't think he would. Uses the black cloud in it, but with his men following, they try to run away. Suddenly, the clan leader named Sealrang came and asked if there was a witch of that land. The carnage was so strong that it caused Janaya to use the black cloud.